the Biden-Harris administration was so eager to propagate their radical gender ideology across all facets of American society that they were surgically mutating animal genitals.
Did you know that in 2024, over 10 million of your and my taxpayer dollars were spent funding experiments on and creating transgender animals? Can't make this stuff up, y'all. Let's check it out.
Late last year, the White Coat Waste Project exposed more than $10 million in taxpayer funds that were spent creating transgender mice, rats, and monkeys. These DEI grants funded painful and deadly transgender experiments that forced lab animals to undergo invasive surgeries and hormone therapies at universities across the country.
Now, I don't know about y'all. I love animals, especially dogs and mainly dogs. But I love animals in general. I've always been fascinated by them. So to hear something like this is just really disheartening, especially in the day and age where animal testing has been largely discouraged in more recent years. But just to hear that they're sending $10 million of our federal funds, which is bad enough, of our tax money, that's already bad. But what they're doing with it is just horrendous. It's sickening.
For example, the Biden-Harris administration spent $2.5 million taxpayer dollars, $2.5 million taxpayer dollars to study the fertility of transgender mice. Let that sink in. We spent over $2 million studying the fertility of transgender mice.
$2 million can go a long way in helping out a few families, veterans, various citizens around our country who are struggling. But this just shows where their priorities were. Like, I honestly ask the question, I ask it all the time. Who was really running the country last year? And I think Joe Biden, he's drank the Kool-Aid, the woke Kool-Aid, so he's all in when he's coherent, that is. But I honestly wonder how much of how many of the policies and executive orders that he signed off on last year, over the last 4 years, was he even aware of what he was signing? Like, did he really know? Or they just told him whatever and he just signed it? I would be willing to bet that the latter is the most likely situation.
$1 million was spent to find out if female rats receiving testosterone therapies to mimic transgender men were more likely to overdose on a party drug, commonly used in the LGBTQ community to induce drug-fueled what's called, quote, chemsex. I asked my staff what was chemsex and the chemical, and I guess it's something called GHB, which is a date rape drug, and also a drug that's used recreationally.
Yeah, that date rape drug was something that was really prominent years ago when I was still working in law enforcement, especially here in Las Vegas on the Strip. That was a common claim. A woman primarily would say that she was drugged and sexually assaulted. Now, most of the time, it didn't turn out to be true. Many women would come in from out of state, out of town, and they would get too drunk or get too high intentionally and then find themselves waking up with some other dude, even though they were married. And then there were a lot of claims of sexual assault, a lot of false claims.
So we spent over $1 million to find out if female rats receiving testosterone therapy were more likely to overdose on a date rape drug. Like, that's what your taxpayer dollars were being spent on. Federal funds were also used to forcibly transition male monkeys to see if hormone therapy made them more susceptible to HIV.
Wow.
Now, I didn't know this until recently, but monkeys cannot be infected with HIV. Yet this federally funded experiment forced them to take hormone-altering drugs to study a virus they cannot have.
I don't know if that's true or not. I'm not doubting her. I've never heard that before because I remember back in the day when AIDS first came out, the rumor was anyway, but it was the 80s, I'm pretty sure, during the AIDS scare, but the rumor was that it was somebody had contracted it by interacting, I'll say, with a monkey.
The Biden-Harris administration was so eager to propagate their radical gender ideology across all facets of American society that they were surgically mutating animal genitals. Like, taxpayer money went to that. So my question is, were they castrating mice, castrating monkeys? Were they getting double mastectomies? The language that they used in many of these experiments were, quote, gender affirming care, which I learned about 3 years ago what that meant. I thought that was maybe just some hormones or something very, something like that, but apparently gender affirming care is actually surgical mutilation of genitals. And apparently it's not just humans they're doing it to, we were doing it with taxpayer dollars to animals.
And this is largely associated, many of these studies, I'm not saying all of them, but many of them are associated with Dr. Fauci. And you wonder why Joe Biden pardoned this man. Now, I don't know how far back the pardon goes, because I know he took care of his son to cover his dirty tracks. But when it comes to Fauci, because Fauci has a long history of doing some pretty shady stuff and trying to justify it medically. But again, he has his heroes. To many, he's a hero, I should say. And there are a lot of people out there who would be willing to overlook it because they thought that he was the savior of mankind during the COVID pandemic. That's not how I see him, but
it's well known that because of the differences between animal and human biology, animal testing frequently does not produce results relevant for humans. In fact, 90% of novel drugs that are successful in animal tests fail in human clinical trials. Today's scientific questions are so complex that we have well surpassed a time where it is useful or appropriate to rely on inhumane animal experiments to answer them. Recently developed technological tools can more accurately model human biology and identify solutions that are more useful for human patients. But it is often the federal bureaucracy that prevents these new technologies from being used.
So I'm thinking what she's trying to say is that, considering that the vast majority of drugs, tests that are done on animals, when the trials actually come to human beings, they fail. So I'm thinking she's just asking, so why are we doing all this nonsense? Great question.
Instead of adequately investing in these innovative alternatives, the federal government has continued to funnel taxpayer dollars towards cruel animal experiments.
Agreed.
Today, most of the 27 NIH institutes and centers conduct or support animal testing, as does the Food and Drug Administration, the U.S. Department of Agriculture, the Department of Veterans Affairs, the Department of Defense, and countless other agencies. We have some beagle puppies here with us today. Beagle puppies have gone through some of the worst medical experiments. I mean, drugging them with cocaine, having insects eat at them and their bodies so much until they die, drugging them until they die. These are God's creatures and they're beautiful, and you can see them sitting in the front row today. So we thank the folks who are here and brought these beautiful beagle puppies here today.
I just wonder what the justification is for doing these tests. Do they really believe that these tests will be helpful to humans? Do they truly believe that? Or is there something else going on? I really want to know, and I don't know if we've ever heard the answers, but I know these people have been called into congressional hearings and things like that. But if anyone else out there knows the outcome, please let me know, because I'm curious as to what their justification is for doing these tests in the first place.
In fact, the U.S. government spends in excess of $20 billion a year conducting experiments on animals. The White Coat Waste Project found in 2021 that the NIH, the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, a component of NIH at the time, ran by Dr. Fauci, spent $1.68 million force-feeding toxic drugs to beagle puppies between 6 and 8 months old before dissecting and killing them. The conversation we're having today is important In 2022, due to public criticism lobbied against Fauci's NIAID by me and other members of Congress, another $1.8 million experiment to abuse beagle puppies in various drug tests was canceled. So I want to thank the work of White Coat Waste and everyone in the room today, others who've been on the forefront of this fight to end this sick and cruel and barbaric testing.
Shout out to White Coat Waste. I don't know anything about you, but that is a true waste. It is barbaric. It is inhumane. We as human beings, we're supposed to honor and take good care of God's creations. That's a biblical value. That's a biblical view. And I know some may try to argue that there could be some benefits as far as testing goes, but if the data that Nancy Mace just quoted in regard to the vast majority of these tests fail, these animal tests fail when tried on humans, it seems like it's wasteful. And I really question what the true benefits are, if any.
Of animals today. Thanks to one of our witnesses, Justin Goodman of White Coat Waste. We have in the audience, I already know, the beagles are here. The beagles are a reminder of the real cost of animal experimentation. So I'm looking forward to this conversation this afternoon regarding wasteful government spending on animal cruelty. And I also want to say, before I yield over to the ranking member for her opening statement, that this is a nonpartisan issue. Ironically, in oversight, while we might fight a lot in public, we are actually very nonpartisan here, and some of the most nonpartisan work in Congress comes right through this committee. So I want to thank them.
Well, it's nice to know that there's an issue that both Republicans and Democrats can unite on. And we all know, especially in this day and age, that issues that they can all agree on are extremely rare. Let me know what you think about this issue. Comment down below. And before you go, check out this video right here. I think you'll find it very helpful.